Okichita, Penansikwe, and Dijnakas, Nemexaping and Donji, Mikisi Todum. My English name is Marney Vermette. I live in northwestern Ontario. My home at heart is in Trout Lake. The First Nations I belong to is Lac-Seul First Nations. And I'm a registered nurse and have worked in community for over 6 years, mostly in the home care sector. And I actually worked for a tribal council and traveled into remote flying communities for a majority of my career. So when I first went into the North, I thought I had my background, I had my education, I had some nursing, home care experience, so I thought I knew it all. I was First Nations and felt comfortable going to community, and I had my nursing bag with all my paperwork that I need to be filled out. I went into the client's home, and she was an elderly lady and was referred to our home care program. We had a translator there, as English wasn't her first language. So I started, we sat down and I pulled out all my paperwork and all my equipment, and I started asking her a bunch of questions, and I was busy writing away. I had this big assessment to do and consents to sign, and so I started asking her all the questions, and shortly after, like soon into the assessment, she got up and just walked away, and I was, So I said to the translator, I said, "What happened?" And she said, "She doesn't like that you're writing down everything that she says." And I really thought about it, and I kind of chuckled to myself thinking, I can't believe I was so focused on the task that I didn't take the time to build a relationship. And knowing my people, that there is the mistrust of Western ways. So I packed up my bag and we put a pot of tea on, and I just sat with her and visited with her and got to know her, and she got to know me. And that assessment took 4 or 5 visits. And I never did bring paper back into her home. I just did it on the side. And actually, it was a real eye-opener for me in the way that what I was taught in my schooling and in my first job as a home care nurse was so culturally different. And being of that culture, I felt I was disconnected because of my education. So it was like I had to relearn my culture almost and combine it into my nursing practice. Another story I'd like to share about the differences in community and in the Western world is I had a client. He was an elderly client, and he lived in a little log cabin, and it had dirt floors and no electricity, no running water. He had a wood stove in there. He had his bed and all his belongings. So he had all his basic needs, and had lived like that, well, for years. And Chief and Council got funding to build a house, so they wanted to build him a new house, and they built it right beside his log cabin, and it was brand new, had running water, had electricity, had wood stove, or electric cooking stove, washer and dryer, everything, all the amenities that he would need, and he refused to move. And I really had to think about, why? Like, why wouldn't he want to move into this new home with all these nice things? And I really thought about, what came to mind was how connected our people are to the land. And sometimes even just our physical home can disconnect us from the land. And the fact that he lived there, he was on the ground, he was closest as he could be to the land, living that way, and how that was important to our people. And in fact, the land isn't seen as a resource or something that can be bought. It's a part of who we are, and that we need to be a part of it and to look after it. And so I really came to realize that this man was living in that way, and I really respected that, and really taught me a lot as well. The need is there, especially in the remote communities. Actually, when I worked in home care, it was one of the biggest barriers, was finding affordable, accessible training. I had some staff that took several years to get their PSW certificate because it was just so hard for them to leave their communities for weeks at a time. The first part of our course is a lot about culture and the importance of culture. It's also, there's some content in there about historical trauma and intergenerational trauma, and the importance of knowing, when you're not of that culture, knowing that the history of our people and how that impacts their health today. And that just brings me to another story, because I used to, well, in one of the communities I visited this one time, I'd stay at nursing stations, and it was mostly because there weren't hotels in the small communities I visited. So one time I was boarding with a nurse that had just moved there a month or two before, and she was the nurse in charge, and she was telling me all the issues she saw in the community with the dental problems and the obesity and the inactivity of the youth, and how she had these ideas of, setting up, exercise programs in the schools, and she had all these ideas, and I just sat there and listened. And anyways, my ride came, and we went out, and I went out with the worker in the community, and we went fishing, and we went out for the evening, and she took me on a fish fry, and I came back around 10 or 10:30 at night, and the nurse was getting ready for bed, and I just really started thinking about her role in the community and how she was so separated from the community, yet she was wanting to make changes or make a difference, but in my mind she wasn't really seeing what the community's needs were. And in order to see that and really know that, you need to become a part of the community. We had a survey that went out across the country and looking at the needs of elder care, and from that survey we developed the core, like the clinical content of the course. So that actually was developed, and then myself and Janetta, another co-worker out of Alberta, and with the assistance from our elders network, developed the cultural content of the course. So that blueprint was put online, and from there we sent out a call for reviewers to review our course, so from community. So we had an outstanding amount of response to that. It was the highest, I think, in all of with all our courses. It was really coming from the community. This is what, like, their input into the course. And I think that's really important in our courses, is that it comes from community, and otherwise it's not meeting their needs. I really wanted to make it aware in our course that not every community is the same. You can't say every community is the same. Even in Northwestern Ontario, the communities I went to, every community was unique. And we really wanted to ensure that in our course that was loud and clear. And in fact, with our case studies, we have case studies around some of those practices. So how would you, as a healthcare provider new in a community, what things could you do to find out the unique protocols for that community? We've had communities actually go to their funding body and apply for funding to bring their community members together and to do a face-to-face training, so that based on our elder care course, and so that they could be comfortable with online learning. And at the beginning I would say to them, if you're comfortable with going on Facebook, and I actually asked the question, how many of you have Facebook accounts? And they all raise their hands. I say, if you can go on Facebook, you can access our courses. And so I think that really brought down the anxiety level. It was just like, oh, I can do this. The initial feedback was a lot of, there was lots of phone calls, there was lots of password resets, lots of new accounts came through, and for example, an elder from a community in Northwestern Ontario called me and wanted to know more about the course and about our program. And so when I described to her who I was and how that came to be, this course and our process, she became very excited and thought this was something her community needed to know about, and invited me to come to speak to her health program. I'd like to share a quote that's actually in our course, and it was given to us by a CHR in Sains River First Nations. Her name was Frances Cabate. I was very excited to take part in the elder care course review. As a primary health care provider in the community, it is important that our elders are being looked after with the utmost care we can provide. This course can provide our workers with understanding and knowledge to provide a safe environment, along with respect and protocols in caring for the elders. The goal in our community is to keep our elders in their home for as long as possible instead of them being put in a long-term care facility. And I just think this eloquently states the importance of the elder care course and the meaning in community.